If you haven't noticed already, the American government is pretty much a complete mess right now, especially since 2016. No one is agreeing on anything, and just looking at the bills voted on in Congress, it's pretty obvious that the politicians are purely voting along party lines, and it's just whoever has the majority, and no one is ever going across the aisle to vote. Meanwhile, they're also getting rich, but where did all that money come from? In most cases, it's due to getting paid by big corporations and companies to secure their vote to benefit the company. For example, many Republicans are backed by big oil companies so that those politicians vote against clean energy bills and electric cars. Um, Another thing is that they're also involved in a lot of insider trading, even though it's legal. It's pretty clear that they're involved with that, and nothing really ever comes of it. But that is also just changing how our legislation is being made just for personal gain. Our country is becoming more divided by the day, and it's setting us up for major collapse in the future. Um, for instance, the January 6th insurrection attempt. The biggest warning sign we've had in recent history. That things are going to boil over to a huge dramatic event that's going to leave our country crippled. Lobbying and the payment of companies from companies to politicians is creating huge amounts of tension within our government and is creating a devastating trend of voting based on party lines. It is easy to look up the evidence that our country is becoming more divided. Supreme Court cases, bills in Congress, nearly every single bill passed in the past couple of years has been strictly voted on by party lines. This is looking at government records from the Congress website. Um, right here is a graph from the Pew Research Foundation. They're a very well known and respected research organization. They're very credible, and this is just a display of showing the shift apart from Democrats to Republicans in the past 30 years. It's a little outdated, but it shows um, really the underlying message of the division in our country. Many people argue that when politicians are just voting along party lines, it's just what they're voted to do. However, um, they're represented, they're voted in to represent the people, and the will of the people in society is not often looked at when it comes to how things are passed. Just look at COVID relief bills and other things um, that were completely, all Republicans voted no, all Democrats voted yes. Um, it shows the division in our country is huge. I think one way to combat political polarization is to remove corporations from being able to pay politicians to secure a vote from them, or at least further restrict them. This is a chart from Forbes earlier this year showing how much Republicans were paid by big oil companies, summed up to almost $400,000 in contributions. Um, and this, this would bring back the purpose of politicians if we got rid of this huge donations to politicians, because their purpose is to represent the people and vote for the things that their constituents want to have implemented, opposed to just giving support to the highest bidder. Removing this or restricting this wouldn't cost anything per se, but I don't know how it would go into effect due to the fact that any political leader in their right mind wouldn't vote for this because it would effectively remove the ability for them to get rich easily. Funny enough, people tend to get greedy, so I doubt anyone will vote for this kind of action. Many people will say that lobbying is how politicians learn about what the people want them to vote for. However, this is true, but it's gone way too far in this country, and it's destroying our democracy by companies taking over what goes forward in our country. It's just whoever is the highest bidder that gets the vote, it seems like. Since political polarization is such a huge and wide topic with many causes, we need to focus on one aspect at a time. Lobbying and financial gain by politicians is completely skewing how our legislation is being made and is becoming more apparent by the day. There have been attempts at reducing the financial gain from politicians, such as the 1995 Lobbying Disclosure Act, but this hardly made a dent. This is a screenshot directly from the Congress website outlining the first part of the bill. It's just making all the records public, and that's essentially all it did. It didn't deter too much. Um, but politicians were able to even get around this, and they used insider trading is a big thing. It's not often forced, um, but it's pretty obvious when they do it. I'm proposing that the government implements harsher restrictions on lobbying and donations from corporations to politicians, and to ban or actually restrict politicians from the stock market while in office. A complete ban of the trading in stock market could be ruled unconstitutional in courts. So at the very least, I think politicians shouldn't be able to handle stocks themselves, and they should have their portfolio handled blindly by an independent financial advisor. This was actually proposed by a Texas Republican a couple years back, but nothing ever came up with it. The main issue is going to be the implementation of law to enforce trading and lobbying. It's hard to imagine that anyone partaking in the insider trading and excessive donations would vote to restrict how they get money, so it's unlikely that anything will change. In a world and society that is constantly moving forward and changing, it's vital for a government to be doing the same to help society flourish and not create conflict. So many conflicts going on in the world, such as the provocation from North Korea and Russia constantly threatening war. We as a nation need to focus on coming together instead of attacking each other. We're just doing the enemy's dirty work for them. Political polarization rips countries apart. We see that in so many failed nations. So it's an issue that needs to be resolved soon and now.